This is part 10 of Federalist number 6. We'll start with the paragraph that says, "In the government of Britain, the representatives of the people compose one branch of the national legislature. Commerce has been for the ages predominant pursuit of that country. Few nations, nevertheless, have been more frequently engaged in war, and the wars in which that kingdom has been engaged have, in numerous instances, proceeded from the people." He says, look at Britain. Britain has what we call House of Commons, which is supposedly the representatives, these people that gather in House of Commons. Representatives are your commoners, your average British. They're commercial people. They have been commercial people. And that part of their government is almost close to a republic. He's bringing this up because he says even though England has king, has a House of Lords, but they have House of Commons, which pretty much makes the parliament. So they're commercial. In a sense, they have a shape of almost a republic, or at least that part of the government of Britain. Yet look at how many wars they've gone into. Again, an answer to people who say commercial republics don't go to war. So we don't need to unite. These 13 new states don't need to unite. Because if you're commercially oriented, if you're republics, we won't go to war. And Hamilton, here in Federalist number 6 says, "You're fools if you believe that." Here are all the examples that I can give you from the pages of history of the world that will prove you wrong. The next paragraph says, "There have been, if I may so express it, almost as many popular as royal wars." It says, look, a lot of times we know the kings and their palaces and their courts start a war because of ambition, because of lust for power, because of jealousy, because of all stupid reasons. But it says sometimes people, majority of people, if they get emotional about something, their passions run high, and they might force the government to take action because the government wants to say, yes, we are your leaders, we feel your pain, so we're going to respond to what you're telling us. And in the paragraph he continues, "The cries of the nation and the importunities of their representatives have, upon various occasions, dragged their monarchs into war, or continued them in it contrary to their inclinations, and sometimes contrary to the real interests of the state." It says, look, all this cries and yelling that we want justice, our people have been wronged, that so and so such country has wronged us, they have disrespected us. They raise their voice and they complain so much that the king, the monarch, decides, I've got to show these people that I'm their leader, and then he'll start a war. Even when it's contrary, even when it's not good for the interests of the country. Or let's say a war has started, and it's the best thing to do is to stop it from going any further. And the people's cries, the people's request and demand that no, you shouldn't stop this war, again makes a monarch to make the wrong decision and continue the war and ruin the country, really damage the interests of the state. he continues, in that memorable struggle for superiority between the rival houses of Austria and Bourbon. When he says houses of Austria and Bourbon, they're talking about two courts, the courts of Austria and courts of Bourbon, the two kingdoms or the two palaces, which so long kept Europe in a flame. It is well known that the antipathies of the English against the French, seconding the ambition, or rather the avarice, of a favorite leader, protracted the war beyond the limits marked out by sound policy, and for a considerable time in opposition to the views of the court. So he says, look, we look at two different palaces in Europe. Look at England and France. There was a time when both of them knew that they should stop fighting or not drag the fighting any longer, but he says the ambition and avarice of a favorite leader. He's talking about the Duke of Marlborough, okay, one of the dukes of England. It was his ambition and what he in a selfish way wanted that dragged the war on and on and on, even when the court, even when the king did not want it, but this duke kept the war going. So again, a reminder that commercial republics, just like any other form of government, just like any other country, passions run high, sometimes a group of people, sometimes a single individual, sometimes the king and the people around him, and a lot of times the people themselves. Even though it's not in their interest, they either start a war, or a war that started, they won't let it stop because they say our reputation would be in the line, and they just keep the war going till their country is ruined. Even against the interest of their country, they say, no, we need to continue the war. Just remember again those words, ambition, avarice, all those words that he repeats over and over. He's talking about human nature. And as you can see, he's bringing examples from every court, every palace, every kingdom, every republic in Europe, as well as republics of the ancient republics, whether they were Athens, Sparta, whether they were Rome, Carthage, saying human nature stays the same. And the love of wealth and fame and power, ambition, avarice, all of these are always in place. They will never go away. So if we don't unite, people of America, people that are living in 13 states right now, in these 13 states, he says if we do not unite, okay, then it will be really hard for us to go to the West and take control of all these territories. And who knows, because at that time, okay, they didn't know how vast this continent was. They knew that the Spanish had settled over here, they knew that, but they didn't know how vast this area was. It was only in 1803, when Jefferson was president, that he sent Lewis and Clark west all the way to the Pacific Ocean. And they realized how vast this country is. So again, he's constantly reminding the American people in these 13 states, we have got so much wealth ahead of us, and the only way we can fight our enemies, keep them away, and prosper by going and taking over this land is for us to unite. And it's obvious. I mean, we don't need to say this over and over again. Unfortunately, all the native nations that were settled all around here for thousands of years, with the exception of maybe a handful of, maybe less than 1% of these Americans that were settled here, they did not care about what happened to the people they called savages. So when I say America's greatest gift to the world is federalism, I'm not trying to sugarcoat anything. Lots of pain and hurt was brought on the native people that kept this continent beautiful for us to eventually come and live here and experiment with federalism so that maybe we can be a true example to the rest of the world so that we can spread this idea of federalism and eventually unite.